Hey people, it's me again. So, anyways, I have a lot to say as far as that goes, but you know, after all, it's been 24 years since one of the biggest tragedies as far as that goes. 9/11 and all. So, I had talked about my 9/11 story way back. I think it was in '08, I think. And that was kind of like back in the early days of my channel, as far as that goes, when I started to do more vlogs, and it was just more like about a year into the vlogs, as far as that goes. But not that I really wanted to go into detail about it, and, because I think it's just somehow, it's hard for me to explain all of that then. But all I could still remember at that point was early in the day, I was in this room, and somehow somebody had a TV set on loud enough, and I woke up and I had to go to the bathroom, and then I went back to sleep. And then it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and my mom was home from work, and she told me that at her job they had to tell her to go home because there was a plane crash at one of the World Trade Center towers, and that's what happened. And I think later on, then there was like the whole attack where it was like the second plane that hit later on. Except my whole recollection of it is a bit fuzzy, anyways, as far as the timeline of it, anyways. So, considering all of that, we were watching, CNN and all that, and I think I'd gone on the internet, and at that time, I liked to hang around on that website, newgrounds.com, because it was kind of like YouTube before there was YouTube, because of the fact that it was user generated in some ways, but with Flash animation. So basically, I was on the forums there, and I kind of saw like one of the people that I would talk to sometimes on those forums, and where she had mentioned like her cousins were missing because she lived over in Boston, and her cousins were over in New York, and it was like that whole story there. And I think there were some other people that had talked about that, maybe like one of their friends was on one of the planes or was in the tower, and can't even remember the exact story there. But I knew that there was somebody that was worked at the World Trade Center, like Cantor Fitzgerald, or I think that was the name of the firm. And so he originally is from the city I live in, and then he had managed to get out of the Trade Center towers before like the first one collapsed, I think. And then I remember seeing that scene of like when the first tower collapsed and all these people were running away, from the debris. It was just horrifying to watch. and then having like the second towers, I don't know. And of course, the whole thing with Pentagon, and then, of course, what happened like with the people at Flight 93 and all, you know. But what was the eerie thing about all of that was during the whole day, there weren't any cars outside moving. You know. So, what also happened there was my old best friend, Todd, that was his birthday. And I remember at one point where I had talked to him on the day after about it, about his birthday and all, and he was still a bit bummed about it. Yeah. So I remember what I was doing like the day before the attacks, because it was something like where I was talking to Todd at one point, and where we were talking about that one garbage, their third album that was released, you know, recently. And then I think I was going on one of those other sites where I was trying to get myself re-registered, because somehow I think there was something wrong with like how I registered the account and all. And I think at that time, the day after, I think that I was trying to add my classes back, because of the fact that I didn't register in on time. But I think I was at that point where I probably didn't want to. I should have never really taken those classes at that point during that semester anyways, because I was already burnt out, and I felt like I just needed to take a break as far as that goes. But I mean, during that whole entire time, it was just I was starting to get all disillusioned with the adult transition program at the time, and then I think I just wanted to move on and all that, and needed to have a clean break without feeling, you know, any unnecessary guilt and blah blah blah, you know. So that was just one of those things there. But I remember that one point was like, I think there were like calls for censorship, you know, because of, you know, what had happened, I think. But yet still, there's a lot of stuff that was going on that would be like, that certain people would kind of have a calls for censorship in some ways, you know. And mainly that's just like people on the left or people on the right of that sort, you know. So that's just how it is, I suppose. So, anyways, and especially like what had happened yesterday was also another tragedy in itself. And I'm just at a loss for words when it comes to that. You know, just to see like the guy, Charlie Kirk, get snuffed out like that. One thing, you know. But there's just probably going to be a bit of a blame game here and there, and then all the conspiracies abound and blah blah blah. And Not that I actually ever really want to get into that, but that's just how it is, I suppose. You know, especially when a public figure like him gets taken down like that. Yeah. So, anyways, I think that's just probably it. So, talk to you guys later.